Hi everyone. On the 28th of January 2025, I've decided to create a team made out of what I believe to be some of the best European players to exist. Not only that, I also gathered people that I considered my friends, that I wanted to spend time with, and then I think we could pull each other forward in our competitive journey into the game we love. It all started with a message sent to Sip, as you probably know very well. I've asked him if he wanted to be created a team. So before that message, there were actually a cold conversation that we had, that we wanted to create a team. And he was on board, and so was Beton. And we were sort of like the first 3 players that created the core of that team. We then expanded the team to 6 members, and then we added I Am So Humble a few weeks later. This is now 5 months later, and we are world champion. Beton here, that you can see on the screen, is the first Galactic champions for Star Wars Unlimited. And it is incredibly deserved. I cannot think of anybody else in the team who deserves this title more than anyone else. The reason being is because he's in the team by far the players who trains the hardest, and he's also the main deck builder of the team. He's the person who builds most of the decks. I also do build decks, but most of the decks that end up being played end up being his decks. Obviously, maybe it would be otherwise if I was taking part of the event, but he is an incredible deck builder, an incredible player, and his journey to competitive Star Wars Unlimited has been a little bit rocky. He has always became second. Everybody knows Sip, as he wins so many events, and Beton always kind of came out second in those events behind him, and always kind of performed worse than him. The only notable exception was at the sector qualifier Milan, where he managed to become to go in the final. But needless to say, that I feel like his commitment to the game has not always been 100% rewarded, and finally is. He's so deserving. He's the as I said, he's the person who built the deck that allows him to win. He didn't play someone else's deck. He has an incredible work ethic. He plays the game so much more than anybody else, and it is so well deserved. He's also a very, very kind person, a very kind human being. Sometimes even makes me mad sometimes. I remember, for example, in the sector qualifier Liverpool, where he allowed his opponent basically forgot to deploy Queenland in one of the games, and he allowed his opponent to deploy the Queenland even though there were several phases that happened until the moment he forgot to resource, basically, so he could not deploy Queenland. And it took several steps, several things, and he still allowed his opponent to take back. This is the kind of person we're talking about here. We're not talking about a sweaty tournament guys who's ready to do anything to win. We're talking about someone who, even beyond what I would recommend, is want to win fair and square. No shenanigans. Just play the game and win the game. And he's just incredible, and I'm so proud to be the creator of the team that enabled that, because this is, even though of course at the end of the day it's an individual game and only one person wins, it is very much a team effort. And this is why I want to thank the entire team. I want to thank the entire team who has taken part in playtesting together in the last few months. We worked very, very hard, some more than others, but we all worked very hard to make this happen. We've playtested so many games together every week, and at the end, closer to the date, it was every day. The weekend before the Galactic Championship, we playtested almost non-stop for an entire weekend, and it worked. And so it's thanks to you guys, thanks to everybody's effort. Everybody's in his role. Dylan, incredible effort at running Hand 2, various versions of Hand 2 to challenge Sip and Baton. Al and his effort to play aggro and really one of the best Sabine player that I know of, and was doing really well as well. And to train T85, Beton, Sip, and I am so humble for the event. Obviously myself. I think more than anybody else, I've spent so much time giving some of my time to playtest. I was on paternity leave at that time, so I was able to support the team in helping them. And since my baby came out a little bit later than the due date, I was really available to playtest with the guys. And the result is here. The result pays off. So thank you guys so much. And I'm so proud to have created that team, and I'm so proud to be part of that team as well. Also want to shout out the Enigma community. We know that we have a Discord server where we have all of our people who support us and want to benefit from what we learn about the game. We have a Discord, and we followed together the Galactic Championship through a restreams. I basically restreamed the event, adding my own casting. The last game of the finals were very emotional for me. I had a hard time commenting even and making analysis and creating and doing math because I was so incredibly nerve-wracked. I wanted, of course, Beton to win so hard, and those matchups were an absolute nail-biter. This is a huge W for Star Wars Unlimited. It's a huge W for Enigma, but it's a huge W for Star Wars Unlimited as a whole, I feel like, to have a champion like Philip. And the communion with the community, even late in the night, here you can see it's almost 2 a.m. when the last messages come down. We spend such a great time as a community, as an Enigma community, and if you want to be part of that community, please join the Discord, benefit from asking any questions to the members of Enigma, ask anything to now what we have the world champion, get some coaching, talk about the Enigma playlist. There's so much to talk about on this channel. Please join us, and maybe join one of my restreams of events in the future as well, because those are a lot of fun for me and for the community. So welcome to THT, and today we're going to talk about the in-depth report of the Galactic Championship. So I'm done with the emotional part. Let's get into business now. What can we learn from this event? What came down here in the biggest Star Wars Unlimited ever organized? Possibly the biggest ever Star Wars Unlimited, because you know that there's going to be a different formula now moving forward for the Galactic Championship, where to qualify you will need to have earned 100 points throughout the season. So I think the result of this is that maybe you're going to have a smaller Galactic Championship next year. Doesn't mean that the game is doing less well, it's just that the different way of qualifying, it's not going to be an open tournament. So it obviously means that this could be the biggest ever Star Wars Unlimited tournament ever organized. And so this video is sponsored by Card Market, the best place to buy and sell cards in Europe. So let's talk first about the performance of the team. Beton went 8-1-1 in the Swiss part of the tournament. He lost one game to Yukuno Jr. One match, sorry, and he did draw against Sip. So an absolutely insane performance, because those 8-1-1s is not an 8-1-1 in like a regular tournament. It's 8-1-1 against the best players in the world, and it's in the end a 12-1-1. So it's 12-1-1 against the best players in the world. So it's obviously an insane accomplishment, and because obviously Beton started from day 2, he didn't have any free wins. Not a single of those wins that he had here were easy earned, because everybody from day 2 onward was very good at the game. So this is an insane performance from him. Then we got T85, ended up at 4-4. This is honestly a pretty good performance considering the circumstances. Team has been very, very busy leading up to the World Championship, and unfortunately he hasn't trained as much as he would have liked. So he did decide to pick up the team's deck, which was Sabine Red, but it's a very hard deck to pilot. So with very minimum preparation, it was going to be tough for Tim to do well in this event, and the fact that he managed to do 4-4 is a really good performance for him, considering the circumstances. But we know Tim is able to do much better than this. He's an absolute he dominates he's probably the best German player. He completely dominated the German meta in set 4 and set 3. So and even in set 2 actually he did also win some PQs there. So hopefully he will do better next time. Then we got Sip. Sip had also an amazing run. Undefeated for a very long time. He was the other player that was undefeated. I mean, he had one draw against Beton. But then, just like in the regional qualifiers in Lille, he stumbled at the last step. He lost a game, and then he unfortunately ran out of time against the Cad Bane on his last possible run. He was so incredibly close to make it to top 8. Stumble at the last step is been for the second time, so a little bit frustrating for him. But nevertheless, an absolutely insane performance here. Top 14 on such an insane tournament, and once again an 8-1-2 record against some of the best players in the world is an insane performance. We are incredibly proud of him. And then finally, I am so humble, not so lucky on this event, unfortunately. So Humble mentioned even before the event started that he had basically 4 nights of not being able to sleep. He was heavily jet lagged, and unfortunately he hasn't been able to kind of recover from this. So leading up to the event, he was very tired, which obviously is not a good place to be. He also hasn't been as successful in our trainings. He hasn't been as successful in the deck that Beton was. To be fair, Sip also was not as successful. Beton was really kind of in a league of his own in terms of how good he was with Mother Talzin. But he did decide to pick up the deck. I think that retrospectively, I would have liked him to pick up a deck that he would have been more comfortable with. We know he did top 4 in regional qualifier Lille with Queenland Red. Maybe it would have been a better choice for him. But overall, a tough weekend for Humble, with a 3-5 record. Hopefully, you do better next time. And the jet lag was a really big problem for him. Hopefully, he can do better next time. He's obviously an amazing player. So this is obviously something I want also to mention, is that European players have to adjust to the jet lag, which is honestly a very big disadvantage. So that's obviously the advantage of basically being at home for the American players. So American players do have an advantage from that standpoint, that we have to deal with the jet lag. We have to deal with an 8-hour flight and all that stuff. We have to take significant amount of vacation to be able to get to be there and be in good shape when the event happens. And all this is our huge disadvantage. There's an amazing amount of a huge amount of great European players, just like myself, that couldn't make it to the Galactic Championship because it's so far away. So this has to be taken into account if you. Obviously this is an American game, so it has to happen in the US. Nothing against that. Hopefully at some point it will happen somewhere else. But next year it will also be in Las Vegas. Talk about the basic of the tournament. So it happened in Las Vegas, USA, and it will also be the case in next year. They were almost 2,000 players in day one, which is almost max capacity for the tournament, which is great, making it by far the biggest Star Wars Limited event ever organized. And even if you compare this to other large tournaments you see from other games like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! This is still a very impressive number, even for the standards of those massive games. There were 556 players in day 2, and if you count the day 1 players and the players who had a day 1 buy, so not taking in, not overlapping, of course, the players who managed to both play day 1 and day 2, there were a total of 2,213 players in the main event, which is incredible. I personally would have never expected to see that many people. So this is honestly a big win for Star Wars Unlimited as a whole. I will make a separate video talking about the event itself. This video is really going to be focusing on the tournament, not the event. And it was obviously a 3 days tournament between the 25th and the 27th of July. Let's talk about the meta. This is the day 1 meta. As you can see, Han Solo was the most played deck, but not a crazy amount. 50.5% is it's a lot, and there's a massive gap between the most played deck and the second most played deck. But as you can see, this 15.5% is still really reasonable. Like, we're not in the 20% or the 30% range for that deck, which I think is good. Which I think is good news. And then after Han Solo is dealt with, you have a very diverse meta where there's not a single deck over 10%. So overall, a very diverse meta is going into the event. As far as the day 1 meta, the two things that surprised me is I thought that Queenland was very underrepresented. 2.8% for such a strong deck has no business being that high. I think Kylo Ren Green was also kind of overrepresented. And I also think that Darth Vader Yellow was really overrepresented. I expected Vader to be a really strong force to be reckoned with in this meta, because as I said, it takes the meta from a different angle. Space aggro decks are just really good against force decks, and Vader is the most popular and most powerful space aggro decks. But that eye is very high. Obviously, this can be explained by the fact that day 1 was mostly played by players who are maybe a little bit more casual, not as new to the game, so they wanted to pick up a deck that they were comfortable with, a deck that was easy to play, and also a deck that is very affordable. Vader is the most budget deck, and is also a pretty easy deck to play, and is a very powerful deck, and also Vader as a character is iconic. So all those factors contributed to make Darth Vader see more play in day 1, where there were obviously a lot more casual and new players. I'm just gonna shift my screen a little bit like this to show you the percentages, and we're ready to move on to day 2. So before I get to day 2, this is the conversion rate between day 1 and day 2. As you can see, Vader 4 underperformed, which is to be expected, not because the deck is bad, but because there were probably a lot of casual players who were running it. And even though it is an easy deck to play, obviously being new to the game or being casual makes you definitely lose market share. It gives you an edge. Talzin Blue also kind of lost some percentage point. I think Talzin is one of the most difficult deck to play in the current meta. Kylo ECL also very underrepresented. I believe Kylo ECL is not... overall, it's something we can learn from this event is like Kylo ECL is not as good as another Kylo deck, which we'll talk about very soon. Deck that did very well. Sabine ECL did very well. Still a very, very strong deck. Anakin Blue did well. Han 2 Blue did really well. I think that as powerful as Thorrk is, I think Thorrk becomes so much better against people who are not really good at the game. Thorrk becomes a lot worse whenever you know how to play around it. It's still an amazing card, even against really, really good players, but it's not as strong. So it's no surprise to me that Force decks really were doing really well. So we see Queenland Takintown, Anakin Blue, and 2 Blue. All those decks are Force throw decks. It's no surprise to me that Force throw decks really were doing well in the event, in day 1, because typically, as I said, casual players have a difficulty playing around Force throw, because it's a card that requires some knowledge of the game, some really understanding of the game to kind of like play around. So its power level can be mitigated, but this card is even more powerful in an environment where people are not super experienced with the meta. This was the meta going to day 2, so this meta obviously takes into account the people who make it to day 1, but also takes into account, so the people who make it to day 2 from day 1, but also people who had the day 1 buy. So, here in this case, you can see Vader definitely went down very hard. Yoda raised to the top. I think Yoda is a deck that... Yoda is kind of the Palpatine of heroism, in a sense that it's a leader that deploys very late. It's one of the best in my opinion, it's the best 7 deploy leader in the game, and it has one of the most powerful deployment in the game. And he's very, very powerful. We saw Kylo Ren Red out of nowhere rating up to 2.5%. The reason why that's the case is because the Bothon network team was almost in its entirety, there were a few exceptions, but almost every single people from the Bothon network team decided to pick up this deck, which obviously artificially raised its participation level to a very high level. So they really surprised the meta with that. Other than this, with Cad Bane being pretty high, Queenland definitely raised. I think the top players really understand that Queenland is an amazing deck in the current meta, and obviously we saw Darth Vader going down pretty hard. Not because Darth Vader did particularly poorly in conversion rate, actually did pretty good. It's just that top players do not want to play Vader, because the best players in the game don't want to be playing a deck where it's very difficult to leverage. Vader is such an easy deck to play, it has so few lines of play. Like, it's very difficult to leverage your skill while playing a deck like this. You're very dependent on the draw, and you're very dependent on your opponent drawing specific card to hate on you. And this is not a situation that the best player in the game wants to put themselves in most of the time, which is completely understandable. Moving on to the day 3 meta. So yeah, market share of Han Solo Blue going into day 2 was 23.1%. It's not a surprise. The deck converted very, very well from day 1 to day 2 for the reason I already explained. And there were also a lot of top players who elected to play that deck, which is not a surprise. It is undeniably the best deck. And it's also a deck where you can leverage your value. Also, Mother Talzin, for the similar reason as Unread, saw a lot of play, even though it didn't convert it very well from day 1 to day 2. I think a lot of people like to play Mother Talzin because he was kind of like very, very good, just like Han was, but was not as much on the radar. So I think this is something that really helped. For example, Mother Talzin does a lot better against Vader Yellow than Han Solo does. So that's, for example, like one of the advantages that the deck has. And going into day 3, we can see that Sabine did very well, raising from 5.9% to 11% in the meta. So I'm going to do a lot of back and forth. Queenland about the same. Cad Bane exactly the same. Mother Talzin did go down a little bit. Actually, the only Talzin player, most of the Talzin players who managed to make it to day 2 were from Enigma. So out of the 4 day 3 Talzin, 2 of them were Enigmas. We also added Versio Data Vault, which we'll talk about later, rising in percentage up to 4.1%. It is undeniably the best control deck in the current meta, and we'll get a chance to talk about it. Emperor Palpatine also doing very well. I think Palpatine was a really smart choice for this event. It's a very, very mid-range heavy meta, which makes Palpatine very strong naturally. But obviously, there's still some Sabine out there. There's still some Vader. There's still some really bad matchup for Palpatine. So Palpatine, as usual, is still an incredibly big gamble in a tournament. But I feel like it was a pretty good meta for Palpatine overall. And then we saw the Kylo Ren Takintown raising for 2.5% to 8.2%. That's because both the network players are just really good. They're just both the network is the biggest team, but at this event they show that what they it's not only about quantity, it's also about quality. They have a lot of really great players. People like Yukuno Jr., even though he was not playing Kylo Ren, but David Hoyland, Lego Pizza, George the Hulk, players like, they have a lot of really great players. So it was really amazing. So they really, really did well. So Sabine did really well, and we also saw a really big collapse of percentage here for Han Solo Blue. So you can see when both really good players come into play, every good players came out with a plan for Han, and it's really had a toll on Han, because Han Blue went from 23% to 64%, showing off that the deck can be beaten. It's not as dominant as people think. Anakin Skywalker just slightly raising in percentage, so Anakin Blue doing well. And yeah, that's most I can do. And Sabine, Sabine just raising the hands. And Sabine just a very solid deck. It's just as simple as that. So this was my meta prediction, if you remember from my previous video. So there's a lot of people I've heard, yeah, you guys, you putting your video, but how much of of your information is actually accurate? Are you just trying to gaslight us and give us like fake information so you can have an edge during the tournament? That is absolute bullshit. As you can see here, this was my prediction of the meta, and for the most part, this prediction was completely accurate. The 3 most successful Force decks were Han Solo, Queenland, and Mother Talzin. The Vader ECL decks, even though they didn't do as well in this event, Kylo Ren, Gar Saxon, Kira, I think that was accurate. Those were the 3 most played deck for the Vader ECL shenanigan. And then among the other successful older decks, Vader, Sabine, and Cad Bane, all 3 of those decks, so a wide amount of play. So as far as I'm concerned, this prediction was completely accurate. Obviously, there's a couple of decks that I did not expect, but that's because they were very well hidden by the team that were playing them. I think the 2 decks that were not on my radar were Iden Daedavolt and Kylo Takintown, which we'll talk about later in this video. But overall, I think my meta prediction was very, very accurate. So here you go, guys. So do what you wish with that information. And here we go. This of course put us into the top 8 here. Interestingly enough, there's 3 players on 9-3 who managed to make it to that takes into account the so never mind. So they were 9-2, yeah. So 3 players on 9-2 who managed to make it to top 8, which is nice. So in top 8 we got 2 Han2 Blue, 2 Kylo Ren Takintown, so amazing success from both on the network. Out of the 6 players who made it to Kylo Ren Takintown, 2 of them managed to make it to top 8, which is an amazing performance. 1 Queenland and a Vader, and another space aggro deck that not many people were expecting probably. It is the Han4 Takintown, which is another space aggro decks, and we know space aggro decks are really, really good in this meta. Okay, first of all, of course, we're gonna talk all the lists that I think are worth mentioning. So those are my honorable mentions as far as lists are concerned. So I think the lists that are particularly interesting. I'm only selected lists that have managed to make it to day 3. So of course I had to cut the line somewhere, otherwise this video would take forever. And it's already gonna be a very, very long video, I can tell you that much. First of all, we got T-Bugs, who came out 61 with a 7-0, a 7-win, 4 losses record, and he was running one of the many space aggro deck we saw throughout the event. This one with Kazuda Blue. So Kazuda Blue got a lot of help from the new set, and T-Bugs decided to play none of that stuff. 3-3 Sentinels that for 2, like basically better version of Battlefield Marine. Nah, not good enough for me. Ogdo Bogdo 5-5 for 3 with no downside, not good enough for me. He decided to discard those cards. I mean, he was playing Ogdo Bogdo in the sideboard, which I'm sure in some matchup was amazing. But overall, the idea of his deck was to play in space, was to judge the opponent as much as possible. And in a force meta where you have to play on the ground, playing in space is a really good idea. And since your opponent is going to be running a 28 HP base, those little point of damage here really, really matter. So overall, he just decided to play all space. He's obviously playing the Corporate Defense Shuttle, which is obviously the main reason to be playing Kazuda Blue. He's also playing the Dikira Cargo Frigate, which is a really large unit with, you can turn off the downside, so basically 6-7 for 5. And he's also playing Attack Run as a way to attack with multiple units at once. As far as the new card is concerned, in the main deck he's running the Nebula 1 Starfighter, which saw a lot of play throughout the event. This card is really, really solid. Not many people talk about it, but it's a really strong card. And the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect from Kazuda. And his sideboard was Ogdo Bogdo against deck in which you're okay playing on the ground. Especially in a mirror match of like space aggro decks, having a unit like this that can put a lot of pressure makes a lot of sense. So really ballsy takes here for Bugs to say, I'm not going to use any of the new stuff, despite it being really good in Kazuda Blue. And yeah, my only main criticism of this deck, I think the decks makes a lot of sense. My only criticism I have is, in my opinion, if you're going to be running all space, if you want to play Kazuda and you want to be running all space, in my opinion, you're better off running red. I think red provides better tools overall. I mean, corporate defense shuttle is nice, but in my opinion, trench run and heroic sacrifice are just so incredibly good. And also you get access to 4 cars, I believe in. You get access to Cassian. You get access to so many good red cars. I think just the reds just outweighs the blue. If you're not going to be playing on the ground, if you're not going to be playing Ogdo Bogdo or Loth Wolf, I think you're just better off going full space. You're better off going red. The next list I want to talk about, and one of the lists I was not expecting to see a significant play, it was very interesting because there are a lot of people who brought Iden Green in the event as a hard control archetype. So a lot of people got the same idea, but they ended up with very different builds, which makes me think that those guys did not talk to each other. All of them spontaneously and independently from one another came out with this deck, or maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it was posted by K2OD or something, but yeah, this is the idea that evolves. Hard control archetypes. So something I've said before, and I'll say it again, the main problem with hard control right now is the finishers. Hard control really struggle to close out game because the late game threat that he has access to are trash for the most part. But you know, there's actually a color combination that fixes that issue, and if you're playing green instead of playing red or yellow, you actually have access to much better finishers. You got access to Devastator, like the 10 cost Devastator. You got access to Reinforcement Walker, which is incredible. So you got better top end in green. And now there's been a lot of great blue-black. We saw, for example, the new what's it called? This card is called. He's also played Calculated Lethality, which is awesome. Crushing Blow, for example. So now there are more tools for blue to just stand by itself without the need of adding an additional color. You just have this critical mass of removal. Still, the removals are still expensive and not always super optimal, but still you got it and save removal. So it's a hard control list. The idea of the list is obviously you're gonna be killing units, wiping the board with Super Laser Blast or Nebula Ignition, and then once you reach inevitability, you get into those very large super late game threat. Having an extra 10 cards in your deck also will help you in the hard control mirror. So I think that until Fantasy Flight games give us better lead game closer, green is going to be the best way to win hard control, to play hard control. I think that in this meta where decks are able to provide so much value, you can't just win by outvalue your opponent anymore. This is something you could do in a previous set. You could outvalue the opponent with Bosk Double Redeem. With Kiadi Mundi, all the unit that gives you a card, all the Owen Lars, the Jedi in hiding, all the guys that just 2-for-1s all over the place. It's very difficult to hard value people anymore. And that's the reason why I think hard control was a very difficult deck to play in this event. And this is a prediction I made. I was not expecting hard control to do well. And he did okay. He didn't. I didn't green. I think fixed the problem by saying I'm not gonna try to outvalue my opponent. I'm just gonna reach the late game, and then I'm gonna drop Avenger. I'm gonna drop Walker, Avenger, Devastator, Annihilator, and hope that gets me there. That's basically the plan. So really cool deck, really cool idea, and I think if you want to run hard control, this is probably the way to go. Moving on now to another Kazuda list, which comes down to that categories of deck which are just trying to be space aggro decks, which we know is one of the answer against Hantu and against those force decks. Just playing space, because they're playing on the ground, you play in space. They're playing mid range, so they're not as quick as you are, and they're running a 20 HP base, which make them easier to kill. And this strategy has been very successful throughout the event, and we saw this with Inseton, which ended up ranked 28 with this Kazuda. So I'm going up from the list that performed the most to the next one. So this one is ranked 28. Amazing ranking. Amazing performance with this deck overall. And this is, as far as the list is concerned, this is exactly what you can expect from the Kazuda Red. And I believe Kazuda Red, if you are going to go for the full space aggro approach, you are better off playing Kazuda Red than Kazuda Blue, because you get, look at the amount of red card he plays in this deck. Incredible. Of course, the A-Wings, the black ones, the trench runs, the heroic resolve, and also the 4 cards I believe in, which in this deck, the only non-heroic card is going to be the Daring Ray, 2 copies of Daring Ray, 3 copies of Stolen ITL, so very consistent. An amazing deck. A couple of Jedi Starfighter for the mirror match and for the Vader decks. The Bamboos, 3 copies of Bamboozle for Kylo Ren. A really, really well built deck. So congratulations to Incetone for this performance. Next, we got my pet deck. I mean, my current pet deck. It is obviously Gar Saxon ECL. I posted the list on my channel. I think if I would have participated in a Galactic Championship, there's a really good chance I would have played that deck. I think this deck is very powerful and also very underestimated. And it is, in my opinion, the best Vader, the new Vader, the best new Vader ECL Vader list, basically, for multiple reasons. First of all, you can run ECL. Running ECL in a non-aggro deck is very difficult, because having 8 less HP compared to Devil is just a massive cost to pay. So in this deck, you can basically play Vader on curve with ECL without fear, which I think is awesome. And also, something that people don't mention very often, but very important, is that this Vader ECL is going to have 6 attack, not 5, because of the +1 attack bonus from Saxon. That means you can literally one-shot something like a Han 3/6 and still kill another unit of any size, whether it's on space or on the ground, which is insane. So, an incredible deck. If you want to know more details about what I think about the Academy, you can go into my playlist. I'm just going to mention here the differences between his list and mine. So, difference here is that he's running a lot of 4/4/3. General Grievance, Knight of Ren. I've mentioned it before and I'm mentioning it again. 4/4/3s are just really well positioned in the current meta. Because there's a lot of 2/4s you can kill, which is very nice. Those guys do not die to Talzin Assassin, which is great. So they don't have any specific synergies with the deck, but they just hard solid 3 drops. Is it better than running something like an Axe that is going to become a 4/3 shielded? Or is it better than running something like a Client? I think in a vacuum, they are not, but in the meta, they might be, if that makes sense. So, very incredible. He's running 2 Grievous, 1 Knight of Ren. He prefers to play Grievous because Grievous is blue, which synergizes better with Charleston that he has in the sideboard. Knight of Ren is just because he doesn't want to run 3 Grievous because they are unique, and he doesn't want to end up in a situation where he has 2 Grievous on the board. So that's the reason why. He also running a couple of takedowns, which is unusual, I would say. The rest of the deck is honestly what you would expect. He's playing Owen Large as well, as a way to play run power dark side, I believe, mostly the primary role of that card. And yeah, this deck is just awesome. Once again, if you don't want to know more about the archetype, you can just go on my YouTube. He's running the full package of Cravings alongside the Overwhelming Barrage, which I think is correct. The Lieutenant Charleston, there's a lot of things that resemble my list, to be honest. Some Confiscate in the sideboard. He runs the Legal Authority in the sideboard. In my current list, I run 2 Legal Authority in the main deck and 1 in the sideboard. I think Legal Authority is amazing in this deck. So, yeah, I actually changed my list quite a bit. If you want to see, there's also, if you click on the link of my own list, you will see that I've made some changes. We also saw Rob playing on camera, and he was playing very, very well as well. So if you want to see some high-level Gar Saxon ECL action, I encourage you to check out his games. Really, really impressive. Moving on now to a deck that I believe nobody was expecting, and I still don't have an explanation on how this deck did so well in the event. It is a Vizsla blue deck. I already consider Vizsla a worst version of Bosk, but in this meta I believe Bosk was very difficult to play. And the reason I've explained is because you lack finishers. You see, like, he has barely any finishers. His finishers basically Avenger, Annihilator. So clearly the way this deck reached inevitability is by just drawing a million cards, which he has access to. He's playing I Am Your Father, he's playing Mission Briefing, he's also playing the Strategic Analysis to draw 3 cards. So those cards obviously synergize with previous last ability. And the idea is obviously to outvalue you. He reached inevitability by just drawing more cards than you. That's basically the idea of the deck. It's a control. I found this extremely bold to bring a deck like this, but forced to admit that it worked out pretty well. He ended up rank 49. So sorry, I should have put this earlier in the video. So rank 49, which is obviously insane record. And yes, it's just an amazing accomplishment. I'm not going to try to explain what happened here because I have no explanation how an art control deck of this type can do well in an environment where Ki-Adi-Mundi is everywhere, where players have just a million ways to do for 1U. I just find this very difficult to explain. But if we look at this matchup, he lost to Kylo Ren Blue. No, Kylo Ren Coronet City. Which one is this? I think it's the yellow. I think he lost to Kylo Ren Yellow. And then he lost to Han 2 Blue, which makes sense. And then he got a bye. Oh, then he got a bye, and then he took a draw in the end. So in the end, he won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 game. He also lost to Anso Blue. So yeah, he was not doing well against Han Blue. He basically lost against mostly Han Blue, but he also won against 2 other Han 2 Blue. So a kind of a mixed bag as far as the record against Han 2 Blue. But he won 6 game in the end. So yeah. Anyway, amazing performance, and I would not recommend to play a deck like this, but gotta give respect. Next, we got the Sabine deck from Stinge GR, and he was playing Sabine ECL. I had to mention Sabine ECL since the deck did so well in between day 2 and day 3. In day 3 though, Sabine kind of struggled, but I still think he did very well. This list ended up ranked 24 with an 8-3 record. The list is extremely classic. One thing I'm surprised about is that I'm surprised to not see Medal Ceremony in there. I believe, and you can call me Al, is the person who's the origin of this analysis, that Medal Ceremony is a real antidote to against 4-throw. It's really good against 4-throw decks, which represent a really large portion of the meta, and it's really good against decks that are not interactive. So if you're going into another aggro space deck, which there's plenty of in the event, Medal Ceremony is very strong because it's really easy to get a wide board, and then for 0 giving a bunch of +1/+1 token is really good value. So it's really good against the aggro decks that don't interact with you, and it's really strong against 4-throw, which makes it an excellent card in the meta. So I'm really surprised to not see it. He does run quite a few cheap cards like Specful Soldiers that he can play under 4-throw, so he does have ways to... He has plays around 4-throws, but overall, the list is just extremely classic. Not much to say about it. Just on the sideboard, he's playing 3 copies of Obi Sobek, which I believe is a way for him to give himself some removal. I'll be interested to know exactly against which matchup he wants that card, but it's mostly probably against the aggro mirror when he can put another threat on the board, kill a unit at the same time, which is what Sabine is really good at with ECL, but with Sobek you get yourself more ways to do that, basically. Next we got Darth J. So I just want to mention another list that I forgot to put in the PowerPoint. This was a Luke Daredevil list by Steer Toast Salot. He basically ranked 48 in the event, and he was running a Daredevil's Luke Skywalker deck. It's basically, once again, the same idea of running those aggressive space deck. Daredevil gives you a huge HP differential compared to your opponent, which makes the deck really good at racing. And Luke Skywalker is notoriously more difficult to answer than most of the leaders. So Luke Skywalker is once again one of those aggro space decks. And talking about aggro, not aggro space deck, but mid-range space decks. And in the mid-range space deck space, the king of it is obviously Boba 4 Data Vault. a deck that I've warned people. I said, you guys should pay attention to this deck. It's really, really good in the current meta. And since Boba Data Vault was very popular as a leader in the previous set, I was expecting to see a lot of play. Didn't end up seeing that much play. Maybe people are just sick of him, people just want to try the new stuff. But people did not really follow my advice. They didn't massively bring Boba Data Vault. But Boba Data Vault did really well in the event. And obviously, our friend Darth J is the proof of that because he's finishing rank 21 with his Boba Data Vault deck. The list is honestly pretty classic. He's not playing Craving Powers in the main, he's playing in the sideboard, which is fine. I'm not a big fan of. I think that Gorin Gunship is better than MC30. Gorin Gunship will allow you to dodge Fell the Dragon, which sees a heavy amount of play in the current meta, and I don't think the extra attack coming from the MC30 is worth that. Yeah, the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. It has the droid package. Oh yeah, big difference with his list also compared to my list is that he's not running Invisible Hand. I think it's a mistake. I think Invisible Hand is amazing, especially since he's playing droid. He's not playing like a huge amount of droid. He's playing only 5 of them. But I still like. He actually doesn't play that many 2-drops. He's very, very light on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Only 8 2-drops. No, plus the 3 Kylo Rens, that's 11. Only 11 2-drops for a 60 card deck. That's not a lot. Oh no, he's also playing the Tie Bomber. Never mind. So he's familiar. He's fine. Okay. But yeah, I feel like Invisible Hand is amazing. Not running Invisible Hand allows him to run fewer 2-drops and make his deck a little bit more top-ended, I guess. But yeah, I still believe Invisible Hand is an absolute must play in this deck. It's so good. Moving on to the list of Gyo Kid running as Palpatine Yellow, and I talked about this before, I'll talk about it again. Palpatine loves mid-range meta, and we are undeniably in a mid-range meta. So Palpatine was definitely going to be a deck that was likely to do well in this event. And it did, because Gyo Kid ranked 13th. I think there were like 2 or 3 Palpatines in the top 64. Obviously, Palpatine always gonna have this problem of auto losing to aggro. I mean, auto losing is a bit of an exaggeration, but it's but if you're able to dodge enough aggro decks, this deck will do well. So as far as aggro decks, he managed to win against Kazuda. He did lose to Sabine, and then after this, he did not encounter any aggro deck until round 9, where he won against a Sabine player. I also have to say that if you want to be running a Palpatine deck that is able to beat aggro, in my opinion, Palpatine Yellow is the best anti-aggro. Like, Palpatine Yellow is the best version of Palpatine that is the most capable of beating aggro. It's the most balanced. Also cool things like he's running the Legacy run, which is a great addition for the deck. It's not as good as in Thrawn, but still very powerful because you can pop it to deal a lot of damage spread around the board, which is amazing. So, a really well built deck, and congratulations for his performance here. Next we got Jadimi. He's a good guy. He's a guy I got the chance to play against quite a few times. He was part of the original European testing group, and he was running Cad Bane Red. His deck is pretty much what you would expect. He's running Aura Sing, and he's also running Neo Marauder. He's not running the new 3/3 spaceship for 2, which I personally find very good in Cad Bane, so a little bit of surprise to me. But the rest of the list is pretty much what you would expect. This deck is the reason why Cad Bane is good in this meta is because Takintown decks are generally really pretty good against Hantu, and Cad Bane loves mid-range and aggro meta, which is exactly what we are in. So Cad Bane did not get a massive boost of power from the new set. I mean, Aura Sting is great to drop. It's pretty much the same deck, right? But he's just really well positioned in the meta. Very, very well positioned. So it was a really smart choice. We didn't see any tips to scale in the sideboard. because obviously we're not in a control meta, so it wouldn't make any sense to play Tip the Scale. And obviously because there's no control player, Cad Bane can focus on beating the mid-range decks, and it's exactly what he did. So congratulations here to Jadimi for his performance. Unfortunately, Jadimi took a draw against Sip in the last game because of lack of time, which unfortunately pulled him out of the top 8. So he's finishing with ranking 15, just behind Sip. Very unfortunate. Endgame. We could have had one more European player in the top 8, but unfortunately, they unfortunately had a draw, which pushed them out of the top 8. Unfortunately. Next, we have Avastator, which is a very infamous player. As you might remember, he was the one who won the very first sector qualifier in Milan against Beton in the final. And he has been heavily criticized for doing some really, what we call, rule sharking during the last event. So that was very, very bad. And I'm not going to be defending him on his behavior. With that being said, Avastator is a really young kid, and I think he's learned his lesson. And I'm really, really glad that to see him back on the game and pulling up yet another amazing performance. We have Avastator here in the top 10 of the Galactic Championship with his Han Blue decks, and there's a strong argument to say that Avastator is indeed one of the best players in the world, with the consistently in which he's able to perform. And he's a kid, so he learned from his mistake, and I'm really, really glad to have him back and hopefully show us the way with this really innovative, I would say kind of paradoxically innovative Anakin deck. This is an Anakin deck which is really close to the older Anakin deck. He's not running the 4th base, despite running a bunch of Force units in his deck, which is very, very bold. And the reason for it, and I'm trying to try to explain it. As you can see, he's running just a regular old school Anakin deck with playing some of the new cards. He's still running the Adigalia Yaddle turn 1 play and Secretive State, which are amazing 2-drops for Anakin. He's just basically decided to say, I'm going to be playing the old Anakin, and I'm just going to replace the old 2-drop with a much better new 2-drop. And that's about it. He's also running the new Anakin Legendary with some Paradox side to get his -6/-6, but the rest of the deck is pretty much just the original Anakin Blue. Even running Stella Guerrera, which is a big middle finger to normally people who are running Kia di Mundi nowadays. So why they decided to do this? Why is he just not playing the 4th base, replacing the Stella Guerrera by some Kanan, adding a couple of Mace Windu in there, which is an amazing card, and call it a day? Why did he decide to play the old version? The only explanation I have to this is that he just really like having 2 extra HP on his base. So something you have to understand about Anakin is like Anakin, more than any other leader in the game, does benefit from a high HP pool, because the most damage he's taking on his base, the bigger Anakin Skywalker is. And the only way to keep yourself safe from the opponent while also boosting the strength of Anakin is to run a base with a big HP pool. So that's why Colossus has been so popular with Anakin. But obviously Avastator wouldn't want to run a Colossus deck in a 4th throw meta, because it's already difficult to get enough cards in your hand. If you start a game with 5 cards, it's going to be really bad. So he wanted to have the biggest HP pool possible, but not run Colossus, which makes a lot of sense. So having a couple of XP extra is going to make it so Anakin will be big, and at the same time, keep yourself. Those 2 extra HP can really make the difference between life and death in a lot of situations. And just Avastator felt like this extra HP on the base was ultimately more important. Was more important than the Force card that you would be playing otherwise. What a massive display here of maturity from such a young player. What an interesting meta call here from him. Absolutely amazing and well deserved for his first performance. Ended up with a 9-2 records, so only missing out on the top 8 because of goal average. This is just an incredible performance from him. Yeah, nothing else to say. Before we get into the top played list, there's 2 more players I want to mention, even though I'm not going to show their deck list because I don't think the deck lists themselves are particularly interesting. At least the Yukuno Jr. was running Cad Bane Red, Cad Bane Takintown. He's basically ended up in 9th position of the event. He missed on the top 8 by one little spot, one little. Sorry, just double check that information. I'm just gonna try to. Anyway, I think it was 9 or 10. Sorry, just not 100% sure about this. I'm sorry, but anyway, he missed the top 8 by a hair, and he's undeniably the best French player, at least the best French player who lives in France, because I'm also French, but I don't live in France, so I don't consider myself as part of the French community. So he's undeniably the best French player, and an amazing performance. He decided to run a different deck than the rest of the team because he's also part of the Both Network team. And I also want to give an honorable mention to another player who did just miss the top 8 by a hair. I think he came out 10th or 9th. I don't know which one of them was 8th or 9th or 10th. But George Hoodston was, I believe, is known as George the Hulk. And he's probably one of the best deck builder in the world right now. Every time he comes out with those wild decks that ended up being really good, he has this faculty of being able to build those out of those decks that are radically different from what we expect, and still do amazing well with them. And this is a very, very rare skill in any card game. And I believe he's the inventor of the Kylo Takintown deck, in which he did amazing with, and with the rest, and what the rest of the Both Network team did really well with, which I'll talk about later, of course, as we get into top 8. But I just wanted to mention his name because I believe he's the architect of that deck, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, but anyway, congratulations to him. He's an amazing, amazing deck builder, and also an amazing player, of course. Getting on into top 8. So first top 8 here, we got Yako, who was running his Vader yellow deck. So I said it before, I say it again, the way to beat aggro decks, to beat mid-range decks, is just to ignore them. It's just to ignore those mid-range force decks. It's just to aggro them out in space. We've seen this with Kazuda. We've seen this with all the previous aggro space decks I've talked about. And here, obviously the best aggro space deck is obviously Vader Yellow. But Vader Yellow was a little bit more on the radar than the other decks, so you kind of had to make a choice. Either play the objectively best aggro space deck, or play maybe another space deck that is maybe a little bit less on the radar. Maybe people are going to be countering it less. Maybe people are going to have less reps against it, which means that they're going to be a little bit more, they're going to take lines of play which are a little bit less suboptimal. But maybe play a worse deck. It's always a decision, do you play the best deck, or do you play a deck that maybe is a little bit worse, but under the radar. Yako decided to go for the best aggro space deck, and he did very well with it. The main originality of his list is like he really ignores the Grand Arena. He doesn't try to kill anything. He's not playing Barrage, he's not playing Craving Power. He's controlling the Grand Arena with Waylay, Outmaneuver, No Good to Me Dead. And that's it. 3 outmaneuver in the main deck is not something that most Vader Yellow have been doing, and I think he's been very successful with it in this meta. But the rest of this list is very much what you would expect. There's some Scimitar in the sideboard, which I am not entirely sure. I'm just going to double check something with Scimitar. I'm just going to... No. So Scimitar. So Scimitar reads as, while this unit is damaged, get +3 attack. So I think this is sort of like an anti-Cad Bane Queenland tech, because it's very easy to have damage unit when you play against those type of decks. So Scimitar probably did did pretty well in this meta, I believe. So that's really smart tech. It's nice to see those cards that originally are not really good on paper, but can find their usage in some very niche situations. Another person who did really well with his Space Aggro deck, and that's Han Takintown, sorry. Once again, it's another Space Aggro deck that has a different spin on the list. The idea of the deck, if you guys don't know, your entire deck is made out of odd costed cards. So Han Solo gives you sometimes a +1 attack bonus, but his leader ability is really not that good. Even though it has some really sweet synergy with 3-3PO, which allows you to draw a card every time it gets played. Because with Han Solo, you always know what the top of the deck is, so 3-3PO allows you to always draw the card that you want. And since it's a deck that has a very low curve, a lot of 1-drops, a lot of cheap cards, being able to draw cards with 3-3PO is very useful. So, as you can see, it's almost entirely based on space. The idea of the deck is you're going to be vomiting your hand, go double 1-drop opening, go super wide in space, a little bit similar to what the Vader deck does. And then, once you reach to the moment where you can deploy your leader, you're going to be playing a big 5-drop, like Plo Koon, Poe Dameron, something like this. Then deploy Han Solo, ready all of your resources, and then vomit your hand all over again. So it's a deck that really can go super wide, super fast, and it's a very fast deck, and it's really powerful. So it really is a similar deck than Vader. Obviously, it doesn't suffer from the exact same card. I think it does a little bit better against Bombing Run, but that's debatable. But the more it doesn't suffer from the -1, I think it does a lot better against Talzin. I think Talzin really does really well against Han Yellow, but I can believe you that Beton was really scared of it. Like, I think we were really scared of this deck with Talzin. It's basically a sort of like Vader 4, but it doesn't lose to Talzin pretty much. So I think it's really strong deck, and a really smart choice for this event. And it's always nice to see. I made a prediction that there would be a set 4 leader that was going to surprise everybody, and here it is. That's Han Solo against the all odds. He's also playing a couple of Cassian when he runs out of card. It's just a really cool deck. Gem Communication to get rid of the specific sideboard card that we never tell me the odds. And I also say never tell me the odds, like the deck has never carried his name better. Never tell me the odds that a deck like this would make it to the top 8 of the Galactic Championship. Star Wars Limited is really truly a special game, guys. Congratulations to him. Then, obviously, how can we talk about this event without talking about the decks that has been on everybody's lips for the entire weekend? It is obviously Han 2 Blue. I said it on record that Han Force Blue is undeniably the best deck in the meta right now, and it has been confirmed. In this event, it had the highest representation, and despite the entire meta aiding on it, it still maintained a very sizable portion of the meta going into day 3, even though it did lose some market share. So it is not invincible by any means, but it is undeniably the best deck. Obviously, there's always going to be a best deck in every meta. So this time, it's Han Blue, which I think is not an unpleasant deck to play against. It's a mid-range, it's a fair deck. It's a mid-range deck that is just extremely consistent and extremely solid, and has some really powerful synergies in it. But it's a cool deck to play against, in my opinion. It's not. I have enjoyed playing against this deck. The only thing that people criticize is the 4-4 can be very frustrating to play against, especially when people get multiple of them. We get into that debate later on in the video, but for now, I just want to talk about the specific version of the deck run by Mikhail C. He was running a very interesting version. So one thing that jumped to my mind here is the amount of 2-drop that he's running. One of the advantages of running Han Red is that you do get the chance to play your 3-drops as they were 2-drops. So you play your Ezra as a 3/3 as a Battlefield Marine. You play your Grogu on turn 1, which makes it so much easier to use. You can play your it just makes it so. But in this case, Mikhail here decided to, no, I'm just gonna play the 2-drops are just really good. the Yaddle, the Secretive Sage, the Owen Lars, so Secretive Sage, the Yaddles are just really good 2-drops. So I'm just gonna play them as 2-drops, and it worked out really well for him. This allowed him to have one of the inconveniences sometimes. So this version is not playing Ogdo Bogdo. So I will talk about this a little bit. His version is not running Ogdo Bogdo. I believe that Ogdo Bogdo indeed is not as good in a lot of matchup as we were expecting. However, and the reason why I still believe it is correct to run Ogdo Bogdo in your deck is because Ogdo Bogdo is amazing against two specific decks. I think it's amazing against Talzin. Like most of the game that hand blue, 2 blue was winning is because he opened up with Ogdo Bogdo and Talzin has no other choice but to open up with 2-4 for 2. And those kind of games are just auto wins. Like they put you very far ahead. Another matchup in which I think Ogdo Bogdo is really amazing is against all those space decks that kind of ignore what you do. And in this case, having a 5-3 for 3 that can put a tremendous amount of pressure, and you know the opponent is not going to kill anytime soon, is really, really strong. So I agree that Ogdo Bogdo is not as good as we were expecting, but I still believe he's worth playing in this deck. But Mikhail decided to do otherwise. Maybe if he's on the comment below, we can discuss about this. But yeah, his deck plays a lot of 2-drops. This, I think the reason why he's playing so many 2-drops is because he wanted to get the Force consistently. He was afraid of people denying him the Force. And this has run away. Our Secret Stage is a very sticky card. And something that I want to say, a lot of people kind of mocked me. I mean, didn't mock me, but sort of like questioned my judgment whenever I put Secretive Sage as the best card of set 4. And to be quite honest with you guys, if I had to remake this ranking nowadays, it's a ranking that I did about 2 weeks before the release of the game, so it's worth what it's worth. But if I had to remake this ranking today, I still believe I would put... I don't think I would put it at number 1, but I will still rank Secretive Sage extremely high. Secretive Sage has been absolutely everywhere all weekend. It's the glue that keeps the deck together. It's the sticky Force unit that is very difficult to deal with, that allows you to get yourself the Force on turn 1. One of the big characteristics of this deck is that it does play better against Takintown. I think Han Solo was expecting, I think Mikhail was probably expecting a lot of people to be running Takintown and said, I'm not going to be running into that. I do not want to play cards that just die to Takintown. I'm going to play regular 2-drop without damaging them and make Takintown harder to use. And I think he made a really good choice here. This does have some consequences, obviously. Not having Ogdo Bogdo probably was really bad for him in those very racy matchup. And probably having all those 2-drops did make his top deck a little bit worse than let's just save the game. But that's basically what I say. The rest of the deck, there's not much to say. It's pretty much what you would expect. You see Shadowpoint as doesn't seem play anymore. People prefer Feather Dragon. And I think Shadowpoint is not better enough that over Feather Dragon that it is worth spending the Force on it. So, unless you already have 3 copies of Feather Dragon in your deck, you should probably not be running Shadowpoint. He's also running the Forces with me, as it is kind of like a silver bullet that can really surprise the opponent. Unfortunately, though, this event was run with open decklist. I'll talk a little bit more about this, which made, obviously, this kind of silver bullet a little bit worse than they should be otherwise. And the rest of the deck is pretty much the hand 2 blue that we know and love. And I think we're ready. So you see the 3 bombing run in the sideboard. So very prepared here for those space aggro decks here. Next we have the list of Everly, which is the exact same list. So I'm not going to go over it. It's the exact same card by card. Oh yeah, forgot to mention the fact also that they're also playing the Daughter, which is a very, very interesting piece of tech. I'm wondering how well this performed for them. But nice to see this card seeing some play. Moving on now to the top 4. In top 4 we had Cerberus, also known as David Hoyland, a former Android Netrunner world champion, running Kylo Takintown. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this deck because obviously this is the main deck that took the meta by surprise. I don't think it was on anybody's radar. It was a deck that was designed by the Bothon Network team, which is the largest competitive Star Wars Limited team. It's a team that has like a lot of players, and I think they had at least 16 represented in the World Championship, which is insane. That's a lot of people. That's basically twice more than what the K2OD team had, and it is 4 times more than what the Enigma team had. We only had 4 players, so yeah, 16 players was insane. And they almost all of them decided to play this really, really sweet Kylo Takintown deck. First of all, I want to say that the fact that this is a team effort I think that's awesome. I've criticized in the past certain teams for doing certain things that I think are not good for the game, which basically conceding game to one another, trying to give themselves international ID or not ID in order to manipulate the standing, that kind of thing. I don't like that. I stand by what I'm saying, that I think it's not good for the game. Thankfully, we didn't have much of this in the Galactic Championship, and the reason was that in order to be able to do this, you need to have a critical mass of people who are gonna get themselves into top table. So it's a thing that can happen in medium-sized tournament, but since obviously there was such a large tournament, the teams did not have enough representation to really be able to manipulate the standing in that way. So thankfully, this does not happen this event, and I think that's great. And I'm going to now talk about the positive things of the team. And this list here is the reason why team in Star Wars Unlimited are awesome. This is a team effort, and this is exactly what being in a trading card game team should be about. It should be about playtesting, breaking the meta, and finding awesome lists. And this is, if there's one example of this, it must be this one. What a beautiful, beautiful deck. I'm going to try to explain exactly what this deck is about. This deck is the very first competitive Star Wars Unlimited deck that is an hybrid mid-range combo decks. So you see in Star Wars, in trading card game, there's 3 main icons, aggro, combo, control. This deck does all 3 of those things at once, which is incredible. So it is, at the same time, it has a very mid-range vibe to it. It plays some units, it plays some removals, it's able to stabilize the game, it's able to put the aggression on the opponent with some units. So it has an aggro plan, it has a lot of removal, it has card advantage engine with pillage, lone pike, so yeah. And at the same time, it has a combo components to it. And the combo component is obviously Kylo Ren. We saw Kylo Ren being used as a control tool with Kylo Green, where you bring back Craving Power, you bring back legal authority to control the board. This Kylo Ren is not a control Kylo Ren, it's a win condition. It's gonna win the game by putting 1,000,000 upgrades on it and then kill you in about 1 or 2 swings. So there's different ways you can go about it. You can either get yourself a giant swing that you get to swing right away thanks to Snapshot Reflex. You can also decide to just put a lot of organ on Kylo and just kill your opponent in 2 swings a little bit slower. Or you can decide to combo off with Admiral Marty, where you get to kill your own Admiral Marty using, damaging your own guys using the Holocron, the Scythe Holocron here. And then you get to ready Kylo Ren to swing again and just win out of nowhere. So this deck, whole point is to say, I'm going to try to play a game, but I'm going to put you on the clock. If you don't manage to stabilize the game, I will kill you with Kylo Ren. I will kill you. It's sort of like an alternative win condition. It's a combo win condition that requires very specific answers to deal with that not many decks have access to. Obviously, it's also a 4-throw decks and a Force Lightning decks. Obviously, I think the probably I'm trying to put myself in the head of the team when they designed that deck. They say, oh, Kylo is pretty cool. What if we play Kylo, but instead of playing green, we play the 2 best cards in the game, which are Takintown to beat those on-2 decks, and we also run 4-throw because the best card in the game at the moment. And here we go. And you also get access to Force Lightning. And then everything else in the deck makes sense as a result. You're playing Witch of the Mist in order to get more Force units that you can put. You're playing the Force, but without needing the Force. You just want those Force bodies, so you can play the Fallen Lightsabers on them. You can enable 4-throw and you can enable Force Lightning for cheap. Force Lightning is one of the best cards in the game. It's the primary reason to be playing Black-Red at the moment. An incredible, incredible card that has performed extremely well throughout the tournament. Obviously, you get all those upgrades because, of course, we get to discard ourselves some heroism card like Heroic Resolve. We get to enable Anakin Skywalker go to -6/-6. You see the cross synergy here coming here between the combo part of the game and the mid-range part of the game is just beautiful. And you also have MIGs Migs, obviously enabled with Kylo Ren. We discard our own card. We deal damage to enemy units. We can now go Takintown. We can go Migs turn 1 play. Opponent plays a 2-drop. We discard a card with Kylo. We deal that damage. We use Takintown. Turn 1, we're so far ahead. Turn 1, we are so far ahead. That is so good. That is incredibly cool. We got some Migs pillage synergies. Pillage also synergized with Force Throw. There's some cross synergies between Force Throw, pillage, and Migs. That's fantastic. I cannot say enough good things about this deck. It's such a cool design. It's a very fun deck to play. It's also quite fun to play against. I think it's a legitimately fun. And then once again, unless you don't like playing against Force Throw, I guess. But and then just talking a little bit about the upgrades, we got the Fallen Lightsaber, which are just amazing cards, just to be played normally on your Force units. You got Infiltrator skills in order to make sure that Kylo Ren can get through enemy Sentinels, because otherwise Sentinels are just a hard blocker for the deck. You got a Perilous Position, which is at the same time a control card, but you can also discard it to draw a card with Kylo Ren. Cis Holocron, which is the most amount of damage you can deal for such a cheap cost, so very important. Orchard D4 Blasters as a surprise. Heroic Sacrifice as another way to give Kylo Ren Overwhelm, and also, of course, a card we can discard for Anakin Skywalker to make it -6/-6. And then Natural Reflexes to, of course, attack right away. The fact that this, of course, in aspect is a bit expensive. The Battle Fury, the most stats you can get for once to get a very affordable cost. What a beautiful, beautiful design here. And massive congratulations for the Button Network to come out with such a great deck and doing such a great results. It is very ballsy to them, and they did amazing with that deck. So they 100% deserve this success. Just talk very bit about David Holland. He's in an American team, but he's from the UK, and he's an incredible player, and he's also a very, very nice human being. So once again, double congratulations to him for his performance. Moving on now to none other than Wu. What would be a top 8 in an American tournament without Wu? I can ask you that much. The winner of the sector qualifier, I think the regional qualifier, sorry, in Minneapolis, and coming back at us this time around with the Queenland deck, which I believe is going into the tournament the most powerful deck that was kind of under the radar. It was not under my radar, but it was under the radar in general. His decklist, though, there's not much to say about it. It is pretty classic for what Queenland has evolved into. It was already one of the best decks in the game in the previous set, and now it has gotten some significant tools from the new set, so it is obviously kind of a no-brainer. You got the Adigalia, which is an amazing 2-drop. You got Deepa Bela, which is the best 6-drop this deck could run alongside. It just gives, it's the best 6-drop the deck could possibly run. The only kind of originality with this list is the fact that he's running Queenland Voss as a 4-drop. The 4-drop space is very, very tight in this deck, but I have to say Queenland is very, very strong in this deck, because you get the Ultra Default Busters, you're on the Surprise Strike, though this can just slams for just 1 million damage, which is just amazing. He's not running Qui-Gon Jinn. He prefers to go for the full package of Han. I do agree that Han Solo is more often a better card than Qui-Gon, but I still like to go for 2-2 or 2-1 split personally, because there's certain things that Qui-Gon can do that Han Solo can't. But yeah, it's a really, really solid list. It's a very, very solid list. I just want to talk a bit about the sideboard. I think the sideboard is exactly on point. The only thing that is a bit of a surprise is the 2 copies of Agrivian Parliamentarian. So, Agrivian Parliamentarian is obviously a tag against Kylo, and it ended up being an amazing, amazing choice for the event, because this is a real great solution to it's a great solution to the Kylo Takintown deck. The thing is, Agrivian Parliamentarian is not really good against Kylo Data Vault, which was the deck that was on the radar at that time. Remember, the Queenland deck was completely, the Takintown Kylo deck was completely hidden from everybody until the event. So how did Wu knew that he needed Agrivian Parliamentarian in this meta? So it's a bit of a head scratcher to me. I have no idea. Maybe he just thinks that Agrivian Parliamentarian is just great against Kylo Data Vault and he was respecting the deck a lot. Or maybe he had some sort of insight that the Button Network was on a special Kylo Takintown combo decks. In which case, obviously Gary makes a lot of sense. So I don't know which one he did, but he had a really, really solid sideboard plan against the Kylo deck with Bamboozle and Agri Empire. Unfortunately for him, this did not help him in the matchup, and he ended up losing against Lego Pizza in the semi-final. Amazing performance again for Wu. He's obviously very high on the list. He's, I think, arguably the best American player, for sure, and an amazing player overall. So congratulations to him again for this event. We're moving on now to the finalist. The finalist is no other than Lego Pizza, also known as Yen, a prominent member of the Bottom Network team, and he was running, of course, the exact same deck that Cerberus, known as David Owen, was running. I just want to say something. So I just want to go on that controversy a little bit. So the controversy is about Fantasy Flight Game decided for day 2 to make it so all the deck lists will be public throughout the tournament. And the reason they did this is because some of the, for a brief moment, for about 10 minutes, all the list of day 1 players were public to players. So, in my opinion, so they decided to make it fair, and they've decided to make, okay, we're going to make every list public for throughout the tournament in order to make it fair. And that was their take. I think, and I talked about this with the head of the OP, which known as Bronto, or Nicola. You probably met him during the event. And I talked to him on Discord and I told him, this is a bad call. This is a really, really bad call. And the reason being is because by trying to fix an injustice, which honestly, from a realistic standpoint, has very small chances to have an impact on the event, because let's be honest, most of the players you're afraid of were on at a day 1 buy. So most of the people that were on the radar, that people would have wanted to get information about their deck, were on the day 1. And notably that list, the Kylo Takintown list, didn't have any appearance in day 1. So most of the people had a day 1 buy. And also, realistically, how much information can you possibly collect in 10 minutes reviewing 2,000 lists? Even if you focus only on the top, on the one who did the top, there's very little insight that you can get in such a short period of time. And the problem is, like, making all the lists public, it was advertised as an event where lists are hidden. So people build their deck and shows their deck knowing that the lists were hidden. So it's very unfair because people lock their deck, they already finalized their deck, and afterward we say, oh, okay, by the way, all the lists are going to be public. That is, in my opinion, a far worse unfairness than the unfairness of having just a couple of lists public for a short period of time that only a very few amount of people actually got to see. So to me, it's like you basically have a scratch in your hand and the doctor is, oh, you got a scratch, that's really bad, we're going to cut off your hand. So they basically try to fix an injustice with an even bigger injustice. So obviously the people who suffered the most from that were people who were bringing a deck that was playing a lot of cards that people were not expecting. And the Bottom Network definitely fall into that category. Can you imagine how much better the Bottom Network would have done if their list was completely hidden? They would have done much better. I can guarantee you this. The Bottom Network did amazing in this event. They crushed the event. And they would have done so much better if their list would have been public. So to me, this is really, really bad on FFG. This was a really bad decision. It really punishes people who are trying to innovate, punish people who are trying to bring new things to the table. It also was bad for Team Enigma because even though we were playing an archetype which was widely known, we had a significant amount of cards, and I get into that, that were not what people usually play. And we were hoping to take people by surprise with this. So obviously, if we knew in advance that this event was going to have public decklist, we would not have played the same cards. So to me, this is a really, really bad call from FFG. And I just want to emphasize this, talking about Lego Pizza's deck, because I think they were the one who suffered the most from that. So an amazing congratulations to them for being able to make it to the final of the event despite that. I don't necessarily think it would have made a huge difference for the top cut, however, because in top cut, usually by that time, people kind of map out. But you can guarantee that there would have been a lot more both on network player ranking higher up in the event if the decklists were private, is what I'm trying to say. So congratulations for Ian for his performance despite that. And playing also extremely well. He was on camera quite a few times. And there's a lot of times when I was like, oh my god, what is he doing? I was not understanding what he was doing. And then when a player does a play that I don't understand, and then 5 minutes later or 2 minutes later, I'm like, oh, now I get it. That's the sign of a very good player. If someone is able to make me go, oh, now I get it, you can be sure this guy is really, really good at the game. And Lego Pizza definitely fall into that category, so very well done. We get into the champion. The champion of the event, obviously, our friend, our winner, our first Galactic Championship winner, it is none other than Beton and his Mother Talzin list. So obviously the Swoop Racers, which is the YouTube channel of Beton and Sip, if you didn't know, they're going to go through the list and they're going to go into much more details about it. But I'm going to try to explain what are the things that differ the most from a regular Talzin deck. First of all, he's running Krennic as a 2-drop. The reason why we're running Krennic is because Krennic, we have a lot of units with 1 defeated fact. We got Karis, Night Sister Warrior, and we got Jedi in Hiding. We got Acolyte of the Beyond. So we play Director Krennic, and then we get to swarm the board after with a bunch of units. So yeah, it's not a Force unit, which is very annoying. And this deck does depend on the Force, but I think the upside is worth the downside. It's a sticky unit that plays well into Takintown, and it's going to allow us to swarm the board very well. Other piece of tech that not people were on is a Ki-Adi-Mundi. I think Ki-Adi-Mundi has been amazing throughout the event. It's such an amazing 5-drop in the current meta. It's a deck that is really easy at swarming the board, so it does a really good job at getting coordinate. And whenever someone plays a card and still have some resources left, and then you could play a Ki-Adi-Mundi while having the coordinate, which happens very often, and you know that any other card your opponent plays will draw you 2 cards, this is just like the best feeling in the world. And he's also a 5/7 card that is also a Jedi, a Force unit, so he's just amazing. We are in a 4th throw meta, so card advantage is is more important in this meta than it is other meta. The ability to draw card is just more important than it is in other meta. Yeah, the rest of the decks is pretty much what you would expect. Then you get into the higher hand cards. We got the Devastator because it's really amazing in our bad matchups. And then we got the Sun. The Sun is the card that we find out extremely early on, and we believe is probably the main architects of what made this deck so good. And that the kind of card that the Enigma version of the deck was playing and most other players were not playing. The Sun is amazing for multiple reasons. First of all, it's a high cost unit you can discard with 4th throw. Very important. He's an insane top end. He's basically always an 8/8 for 7, which is just an insane amount of stats. If your opponent doesn't deal with it, he's gonna die. But it also has immediate impact on the game because we are playing a deck that plays very wide, plays a lot of units that have shielded like Secretive Sage, Director Krennic, and as long as you get the Force, all those units get +2 attack. That is a tremendous amount of damage. We saw Beton winning against David Holland on the semi-final of the top 8 because he had the Sun. Really, really, really insane. All those kind of surprise card, we had the Arm to the Teeth and the Ultra D44 Blasters. Smoggle is just that good, guys. Smoggle is just that good. And having those kind of extra card whenever you're on top deck mode, which does happen quite often with this deck. Talzin is a deck that really plays a lot from the top of the deck. Is just an absolute god bless. And those are the best Smoggle cards we get access to. Almost always have board presence. This deck is all about board presence. It's all about putting units on the board while killing the opponent's units. We're also playing the Purge Trooper, which is not a card many people were on. It's a really, really good card in this meta because everybody plays Force. And we also had, obviously, the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. You got the Force Lightning, a 4th throw. So the team will go in much more details on what this deck is all about. I played against this deck so much the past few months, so I know the deck very well as well. But I also know how to play against it. I know how to beat it. So stay tuned for more on that. A couple of thoughts about the side. We had the Ki-Adi-Mundi out of aspect just because it's an amazing value engine. Even if you pay the aspect penalty, the fact that it's mostly a card that you're going to be playing in very slow grindy matchups does make it so Kiadimon is the draw 2 card. As you can see, the sideboard is almost entirely dedicated to fix to beat the control matchup. You might be surprised to not see some Bombing Run in there. The reason why we didn't play Bombing Run is because the deck was already doing very well against Vader. So we thought we didn't need it. Turns out there's a couple of matchups where we wish we would have had it, but you're gonna make a choice, and I think all those anti-control cards really helped Beton, notably winning against Aiden Data Vault very, very late in tournament. Otherwise, he would not be able to make it to top 8. So all those anti-control cards really, really participated into Aiden Grid. We decided to not ignore our control, and I think we got rewarded for it. So what an amazing deck. Very, very difficult to play. The sequencings on the cards in order to get the best value out of everything is extremely tight. This get also punish you if you make a single mistakes. So it's a very hard deck to play. It might be one of the hardest deck to play in the meta, but it is well piloted. It is an insane deck, and it had a lot of innovation here, which made it better than most of the other tiles in red. By the way, you can get the Grand Inquisitor on Card Market for 8.4 euro. So jump on the occasion. This card is really important in many decks, including the tiles in red that the Enigma team was on. Learnings logs in for the tournaments. Let's get into it. What have we learned from this Galactic Championship? So first of all, Vader ECL. So talking about the new Vader, the Vader from set 5. This combo, even though I still believe is one of the best combo in the game, did not perform as well as expected. It turns out that even though that combo in a vacuum is insane, the decks that were going with that combo did not do so well in the event. We'll see if that gets confirmed in the PQ season, but definitely it is a relatively large counter performance of generally the blue, black, green deck did not perform very well in this event. Or at least they performed worse than what I was expecting. As expected, 4th was absolutely everywhere. Out of the top 8, 6 lists were running 4th throws as a 3 of. And out of the top 4, 100% of the lists were running 4th throws. And overall in the event, the proportion of 4th throw decks was extremely high. Despite that, despite the fact that 4th throw was everywhere, the meta was very, very good. I mean, it depends what you define good, but it was definitely a meta that was very fair, where you could play a wide variety of different playstyle. And it was a relatively diverse meta. Yes, Han 2 Blue was the most played deck, but it was very counterable. It was very, very counterable. And you could really play a lot of different decks. There's a few leaders that got completely gated out of the meta, that we will talk about, but also a lot of other leaders got to have their moment of glory as well. So I think that overall, from an objective standpoint, it's a really good meta. Unless you hate playing against 4th throw, and in which case it's horrible. But if you don't mind against playing against 4th throw, it's a really, really good meta. And at least it's a meta that makes the new set matter. It's a new meta, it's the Force meta, right? It's the Force set, so we should have a Force meta. And it's exactly what we got, which is great. A lot of the new leaders got some spotlights. Obi-Wan not so much. We got Kylo Ren, we got obviously Mrs. Talzin. Han 2 Blue Force still did very well despite being heavily targeted. It is undeniably the best deck in the game at the moment, but it's also very beatable. So it's Han 2 Force Blue as confirmed to be the best deck in the meta. And it will remain to be, I believe it will remain so until 4th throw gets banned, if it does get banned, or at least until the next set comes in. With that being said, I believe it is the best. It is clear after this event that even though it did lose some market share from between day 3 and day 2, the fact that it managed to do so well despite being targeted by absolutely everybody is a testimony that this deck is amazing. Then Han 1 got completely removed from the map. It's really, really impressive that Han 1 comes from being one of the best decks in the game to absolutely removed from the meta almost completely. I think the best performing Han 1 was ranked 255. That is insane. Han 1 was still so very, very little play, and a few people who brought Han 1 did not do well. This is the direct result of 4th throw. 4th throw is incredibly powerful against Han 1 because Han 1, it's very difficult for a Han 1 deck to play around 4th throw because Han 1 entire game plan is about sacrificing cards from your hand in order to play bigger cards. So what you want to do is you want to use Han 1 to resource your weak cards so you can get your expensive cards on the board. But then if you do this, you put yourself extremely vulnerable to 4th throw. It is basically, there's no point in running Han 1 if you're going to have to play around 4th throw. And since 4th throw is absolutely everywhere, Han 1 is unplayable. So it's very, very impressive. More learnings. Green is probably the best way to run hard control. Unfortunately, until FFG give us better finishers, green is going to be the key to get ourselves closing games as hard control in a meta where there's just so much value going on from the mid-range decks. But hard control is still exists because hard control at the end of the day, as long as you got good finishers, is obviously really strong in a meta full of mid-range. And we also saw, I think Palpatine was another good example of a great control leader because Palpatine deploy is so effective against mid-range. Kylo Ren is the first hybrid mid-range combo deck in SWO's history, and it is here to stay. I don't think this deck is a flash in the pan. Obviously, it's going to be a lot worse than now that people exist, but people are going to start putting Aggro and Parliamentarian in the sideboard, which is a really hard counter to this deck. Like, it's really good against it. People are going to start running anti-Kylo stuff, so it's going to keep the deck under control, but already the fact that this deck, that the leader is forcing people to put cards like Aggro and Parliamentarian in their sideboard is a sign that the deck is insane, and it should stay so until the end of the next set at the very least. Aggro space is a great way to counter force decks, and was very successful at it. We saw a lot of different iteration of different kinds of aggro space deck, and yeah, it's been confirmed that aggro space do well. I already knew this going into the event, but it's been confirmed. Kira and most Deadfall decks almost disappeared from the meta. They just get outvalued by force decks. So one of the biggest change in the meta compared to the meta of set 4 is the fact that Data Vault was almost nowhere to be seen. There were very few Data Vault decks in the set. Kira also mostly disappeared from the meta, and the reason for this is relatively simple. Force decks are just so good at generating value. Kia di Mundi notably is too good at drawing cards. 4th throw is doing so much value, and those Data Vault decks for the most part were built as slower value engine decks, and those decks really suffered against the force decks. So the force decks are forcing an evolution of the meta where we are now seeing, it's funny because set 4 was supposed to be the set of pilots and space decks, and it didn't end up being that way. The only space deck that was successful in set 4 was Vader, but now that the force decks are here, we are really seeing a resurgence of those pilot decks, space all-in decks that, in my opinion, are not really fun to play against. I don't really like those kind of decks. But not needless to say that those decks are seeing a re-emergence in this new meta because of the way 4th throw is influencing the meta. Which brings me to next point. Will 4th throw get banned? This is the million-dollar question. This is probably the question that is on everybody's lips. And to find out my hot takes about 4th throw and what I think is going to happen to 4th throw, you should check out my upcoming video. I'm not going to give any more information. This video is already long enough, but you can watch out for my upcoming videos where I will talk about 4th throw, whether it should be banned, whether it should have been banned leading to event, because that's another question, is should this card should have been preemptively banned? Did it ruin the Galactic Championship? And should it be banned moving forward? And the different arguments for and against, as you know I like to do. Thank you so much for following this video. This is a great day for Team Enigma. This is a great day for me. This is a great day for Beton. He's my friend. I I have worked really, really hard to help him reaching that stage. I've played against him a lot throughout that person. I was probably one of the person who was playtesting with him the most after SIP, probably. So it's amazing to see him being the world champion. It's amazing that the very first Galactic champion of Star Wars Limited is from Enigma, and I'm so proud to be the leader of that team, and I'm so proud to be the one who created that team. Thank you so much for following me, and I'll see you next time.